They're just crazy. And that's why she says she can see ghosts. And that's why he says he can talk to people who aren't there. They're just crazy, thinking they can see things that we can't, or notice things that we miss. I mean, that would have to mean that you and I are not as aware and as enlightened and as in control as we think we are. So when these people try to tell you ghost stories, just ignore them. Don't pay any attention. They're just crazy, right? Hello, and welcome, my fellow crazy freshwater friends, to episode 8 of the About the Water podcast, an exploration of high strangeness on and around the Great Lakes. Today we carpool through the traffic-packed streets of Toronto, Ontario, on the northwest side of Lake Ontario. It's here where we'll find that our commute takes a series of unexpected turns that will leave a young woman forever remembering the spirits that dance about the water. Episode 8, Crickets Dance. Melly fought back the tears. Just a few more lines to deliver and she would be done. She looked down at the casket, which seemed so distant from the lectern at which she stood. Her handwritten eulogy was starting to blur. She was panicking. The few dozen people that showed up for her father's funeral may as well have been 100,000 strangers. Not a single one of them knew him. None of them knew him the way that she knew him. Melly abruptly grabbed her papers, leaving the remainder unread. "I love you, always, Papa," she said, bolting from the lectern straight out the side door of the church. Outside, Melly sat on the sidewalk with her back up against the church, sobbing. The service ended, the attendees left, walking right past her with nothing more than the occasional "sorry for your loss." Within minutes, the parking lot had emptied, and her old hometown of Temiskaming Shores fell silent. Melly briefly considered a walk to Lake Temiskaming, which straddles the border between Ontario and Quebec. She and her father would frequent the lake on many evenings when she was a child. He would tell her about the times he saw the northern lights across that very lake. "The sky was dancing, Cricket," he'd say, asking me if I wanted to dance with it. "Someday we'll see those lights together, and we'll dance together. Someday, Cricket, someday." She stood to make the walk to the lake, instead bursting into tears and falling back on the ground, realizing that she'd never again be called Cricket. It was her father's nickname for her, given lovingly because, in his own words, "As a baby you'd make noise all night long, Melly. Beautiful noise all night long," laying to rest her beloved nickname, as well as the hopes of her ever dancing beneath the skies with her father. It was all too much. Melly needed noise, distraction, so she decided then and there to climb back into her car and begin the 5.5-hour drive south, back to her Toronto home. The next morning, Melly found herself engaged in her normal routine. The typically heavy and slow Toronto traffic had crawled to a stop, and she decided to try a new route to work that day. It was a shortcut, a coworker insisted, from her home on the city's west side to the heart of downtown where she worked in the financial district. A shortcut it was not. But it was only 8:15 a.m., and work didn't start until 9, so she had plenty of time. Melly did enjoy seeing some new surroundings along the way. It was a refreshing change. While waiting at a red light, Melly noticed a man sitting on the sidewalk facing traffic. His eyes were closed and he was rocking back and forth, fully engaged in a conversation with someone who was clearly not there. He was holding a poster board sign, and in large black letters it read, "Danger, deer ahead." With a laugh, Melly observed the bumper-to-bumper traffic. She looked to the left, seeing the iconic CN Tower and Rogers Center, and she looked to the right, gazing down a heavily trafficked street out towards the harbors along Lake Ontario. "Must be one lost deer," she said to herself. "You're in the middle of downtown, man." That guy's crazy. The car behind her gave Melly a polite honk, indicating that she had missed the light turning green. Looking in her rear view and giving a wave of thanks, Melly accelerated. And suddenly, in a flurry of beeps, the car's collision avoidance system slammed on the brakes. Melly was so startled that she veered the vehicle off the road, down a small embankment, narrowly avoiding hitting some pine trees. Dazed, she stepped out of the car and saw a large deer standing right in the middle of the road. It stood perfectly still for a brief moment before crossing the other lane and darting off into the woods. "Deer? Woods? Wait, what?" Melly asked in confusion. Observing her surroundings, she didn't see the skyscrapers or traffic lights or congestion she was sitting in just seconds ago. They had vanished entirely. Instead, she found herself standing on the shoulder of a vaguely familiar stretch of rural highway as a pickup truck pulled off the road and up beside her. "You all right, miss?" the driver asked. "Where am I?" Melly replied. Highway 11, almost to Huntsville. I thought you had an accident. I saw the deer, but it looks like you missed him." Melly thought for a moment. "No, that's impossible. That's hours from..." She trailed off as she ran back to her car to grab her phone. It was now 10:50 a.m. She saw several missed calls from her boss, as well as a handful of concerned text messages from her coworkers inquiring as to her whereabouts. The last couple of hours had simply disappeared. Melly remembered none of it. The man in the pickup truck suggested that Melly head to a hospital, seeing that she was obviously in distress and very, very confused. But after insisting several times that she was fine, he helped her use a tow strap to pull her car back onto the shoulder. Melly was relieved to see that there was no damage to her car and thanked the man as he set off. She then sat inside the car and called her boss, who was very relieved to hear that she was all right. Not knowing what else to do, Melly explained the entire bizarre story. Her boss laughed at the mention of the crazy man with his sign. "Yeah, I know that guy. He hangs out around the harbors mostly," he explained to Melly. "He had a sign this morning that said something about dancing crickets. Made me think of you, actually. That's what your dad always called you, right?" Melly dropped the phone on the car floor, sitting motionlessly. "Hello, Mel. Mel, you all right?" the voice on the phone said. Melly scrambled to find the phone and pick it up. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said. You've just been through a traumatic personal loss, Mel," her boss offered. "I mean, think about it. You're halfway to Temiskaming Shores. You're probably just instinctively heading home. Maybe just go grab a hotel for the night, okay? Say a final goodbye. You need to take some time to heal from this, okay? I'll tell you what, take the rest of the week off. We'll see you on Monday. It's fine. Okay, Mel?" With a whispered thank you, Melly hung up. She started the engine, and after thinking for a moment, she slammed the car into drive and pulled a U-turn in the grassy median, driving as fast as she could back to Toronto. A couple of hours later, Melly found herself back in downtown Toronto. She made her way to the intersection where she had seen the man with the sign, only he wasn't there. She searched the nearby streets until she finally recognized the man. He was walking through Ann Tyndall Park, a small park next to a harbor along the shores of Lake Ontario. Melly hit her flashers and leapt out of the car, leaving it sitting in the middle of a busy road. As she approached, the man was walking with his back to her, but before she could yell out for him, he spun around suddenly and began to frantically shout and motion towards her. "No, no, no, no," he said, staring at her with a panicked concern. He shuffled through a roll of poster boards that were sticking out of his backpack and held one up for Mel. "See?" he said emphatically, nearly shoving it in Melly's face. The poster board read, Ducks are people too.
What?
Melly asked. The man flipped the sign around and rolled his eyes, continuing to dig for the correct one.
No. Here, this is what he wanted to tell you.
He held the sign upside down, and Melly turned her head sideways to read it. This one read, "Tonight we dance, Cricket." The man tapped a non-existent watch on his wrist.
It says tonight. That's today. Go.
In a rush of adrenaline, Melly hugged the man and thanked him profusely, and then ran off at full speed back to her car. Stopping only for gas, Melly arrived back into Temiskaming Shores nearly 6 hours later, just as the sun was beginning to set. She was exhausted and hungry, finally realizing in that moment that she had not eaten all day. Deciding to grab a bite to eat, she found a small restaurant and hotel located right along the edge of Lake Temiskaming. As she sat down, she replayed the entire day in her mind, trying to gather her thoughts.
This is crazy,
she said, laughing loudly. The server, obviously overhearing, came over and asked her if everything was all right.
Yep,
Melly said.
I'm just crazy. That's all. Totally lost it.
After a short time, Melly paid her bill and left, walking next door to the hotel and checking in. She enjoyed a few hours of mindless television and then decided to go take a stroll along the lakeside boardwalk that ran in front of the hotel. She had forgotten how beautiful her hometown was. Closing her eyes, she listened. The gentle waves were lapping at the sandy shore. She smelled the fresh crispness of the northern air blowing across the endless expanses of the surrounding wilderness. She felt a slight chill in the breeze as it snuck past her on its way out to the water. For the first time in weeks, Melly felt calm. She felt peace. But it wasn't until she opened her eyes that she felt awe. Indescribable awe as she watched the sky explode. Greens, whites, reds, and purples. The northern lights, right there, drifting across the sky as far north as the eye could see. Melly let out a gleeful cheer, her eyes filling with tears as she watched the skies finally dance. She leaned her head against his shoulder, took his hand, and swayed gently, moving in slow circles with a partner that no one else could see. He had kept his promise, and with her eyes to the heavens, she smiled. "Thanks for the dance, Papa. It's good to be home." Melly shared this story with me over a cup of Timmy's, and I spent the telling writing down the details, of course. And when she was done, she stopped and asked me what she could do to prove to me that she wasn't crazy. I explained to her that I wasn't skeptical, and in fact offered to buy another round of double-doubles if she wouldn't mind just telling the whole thing all over again, because I just loved hearing it. At which point she said that I was crazy. And you know what? Maybe she's right. People who tell ghost stories are crazy. And of course, people who listen to ghost stories are obviously crazy. That's why ordinary happenings in an ordinary life, in an ordinary world, would just leave people like you and me wanting more. That's why we look beyond the obvious and the ordinary into the strangeness, because we know that when we do, our dark skies are suddenly filled with colors that not many people get to see. So come to think of it, maybe we're not crazy. Maybe we're extraordinary. And with that, thank you, always and sincerely, for listening. Here's wishing you plenty of color as you go about writing out your own life story. And as you do, may it be as grand, beautiful, and enduring as our Great Lakes. I'll see you about the water.